Okay, so as we consider whether to create new tests, we want to set appropriate criteria based on consumer needs and what they expect from a toilet. A balanced set of requirements makes the most sense, a set that doesn't encourage over-design in one factor of performance. Results need to be easy to understand, ideally pass-fail in nature. If we pursue this, we need to agree on a minimum performance requirement as we did with MAP and WaterSense, then test products as to whether they meet this requirement. Consumers shouldn't have to interpret a certain result. It either passes or doesn't. The results should be applied to all toilets, HETs and 1.6 gallon per flush toilets. As I stated earlier, water consumption is not one of the main attributes consumers care about. As industry converts products to HETs, consumers need confidence that performance is what they expect regardless of how much water the toilet uses. And finally, these tests should be done by certified labs, as WaterSense requires. I know this adds cost, and it's certainly something we are concerned about, but from a consumer's perspective, independent testing is much more valuable for comparisons and ensures a consistency that gives the whole effort a lot more meaning to them. And again, I don't know that we want to jump into this with both feet right away, but I think a way to start here is to think about the 5 different factors. And I'll talk about drain line carry separately. That we ought to have at least an agreed upon performance metric for each of these 5 areas. Now, whether this is in the standard or whether it's something that manufacturers can agree to independent of the standard, I think remains to be seen. But from a consumer's perspective, this aligns with what we think consumers are expecting. And again, listed in order of priority, the first order of business would be to come up with a plug resistance test. And I also recognize that other manufacturers have their own proprietary methods of testing products, some of which they don't want to share. I'll admit that Kohler is struggling with this too. There's a lot more that was intended to be in this talk today that my company said, well, I don't know if we're quite willing to share that yet. But I think what we want to find out is, are other people interested in doing this? And if we can get to that point, then we can start moving forward, maybe in a confidential way, to try and come up with some of these tests that multiple manufacturers can agree on. Now, I think this effort's worth it. I think, again, anything that helps build consumer confidence in low-flow products is a good thing for all of us. And, you know, as a template, you know, we've talked a little bit about shower heads here during the symposium. A lot of these same arguments apply to other products where, you know, we're asking consumers to accept on faith that they're going to work as well at lower flows. You know, let's give them the data. Let's give them information in a way that they can digest it. So in summary, there is a market conversion to HETs. There's no turning back. Industry is manufacturers are busy making these conversions right now. Choices are limited as to what's out there now, but again, every week we check the WaterSense site, there's a few more models of toilets out there, so the choice is increasing. Consumers certainly expect improved performance from new toilets, and they also look at a lot of different factors when choosing a toilet. We think performance testing really needs to account for all of these key factors eventually. And then having a clean, concise way to communicate this with consumers is very important.
One of the statements you made, and I wrote it down verbatim, is independent testing is much more valuable for comparisons, right?
Yes.
Yet a few charts earlier than that, you suggested pass-fail tests only. Pass-fail tests don't allow for comparison. And we found that what consumers are looking for is the ability to compare, just like they do with a vehicle that they're going to purchase, or a television set, or whatever it might be. And with a pass-fail test only, you don't have that opportunity for comparison. How do you respond to that? And is this basically the position of, I think it's the position of most all of the manufacturers, but I'd like to hear from you about it.
Well, my position on it is that if we're going to create tests that deal with a pass-fail kind of result, Either the toilet flushes or it doesn't. A pass-fail test makes sense. Okay. If we're dealing to use the example obviously with MAP, is that if you get beyond a certain amount, yes, a consumer can take a MAP score of 1,000 and compare that with 800, but is that really relevant? Or it's not relevant. And so to the extent that a numerical test, maybe perhaps in noise level, numerical test might have some meaning, because there isn't really a pass-fail threshold with how loud a toilet is. But for things that deal with either it works or it doesn't, I think the pass-fail makes more sense.
Rob, I had a question about market size. On one of your slides, you had mentioned the HETs were 2% of the 2007 market. Was that in use or 2007 sales?
That was 2007 sales, and that's based on the reports that were made by all of the WaterSense partners to the WaterSense program as part of their partnership agreement.
I had one question. I was wondering if you were bringing any dual flush water closets to market.
If into this discussion or in general?
In general, or are you working on dual flush technology?
Kohler's had in our Sterling brand, we've had dual flush toilets for years. And dual flush, certainly all of this applies to dual flush toilets as well as single flush HETs.
Point out to people that all the toilets that are MAP tested still have to be certified, so they still have to
Right.
pass that pass-fail certification for bowl, wash, whatever.
Right.
So I guess what you're basically saying is the certification requirements are not sufficient the way they are. Because if a toilet passes all the certification requirements such as bowl wash, and yet you deem it is not doing a very good job of bowl wash, then there's a problem with the certification requirements and not necessarily the MAP testing. Is that what you're saying?
I would say it's fair to say that the tests in the certification process in the standard don't adequately deal with sinking waste.
Would you say, though, that the certification requirements should be looked at, and Kohler would be willing to help lead the charge to change the certification requirements? Because so far we have never found a manufacturer that will help us do that, so.
It's been debated. I would say a decision on that is fairly straightforward, fairly short in coming. The point I'm making here is that the need is there. And so whether we address it through the standard or through some other way of doing it as it's happening in the market now, the need is still there.
On the question of whether Kohler has the dual flush, Kohler does have 2 models under the Kohler label that are dual
Actually,
flush.
3.
Is it 3?
Yeah.
I know that they have a one-piece. They have one that's called the Persuade that came out, I believe, at the beginning of this year, and I don't know what the third one is. But those are
Persuade's been
3
out for
nice
about a year.
models.
Yeah.
So just a clarification.
Okay, thank you.